Hello, it's John at the Cedar Mountain Outpost with the continued Meet the Musicians series where we connect our community with musicians that they get to see perform. And we've got a big event this weekend, the Wash and Lube benefit, and you are the regular Wash and Lube benefit performer. So, Travis, thanks for joining me to talk about it.
Of course, John. Thanks for asking me to come up.
Yeah, and you are, obviously a bike enthusiast. As this is literally in the middle of a ride. So,
Yes.
awesome. Um, One thing I've always appreciated about seeing you play is it's always fresh and it's always different. What can our guests expect to? What should they anticipate from you on this Saturday? Wait, or is it Sunday?
It's
Shoot.
on Sunday.
On Sunday, thank
It's
you.
on Sunday. Um, yeah, just about every time I play with different group of people, and the group of musicians I put together for this event, um, Christian, who's my friend here and manages, I believe that's his title, manager
Yeah,
or
general
one
manager.
of the
Yeah.
managers of the Outpost. He wanted, he wanted some music that was going to be really kind of universal and interesting to a lot of different people. And we've done acoustic and sort of songwriter stuff in the past, but I put together basically like a soul band with this incredible drummer. His name's Devin Neal, and he's the singer. Derek Gardner, who's our local keyboard virtuoso on keys, and a guy I just met last night. His name's Adam Rose, and he's the guitar player. So I think we just played last night at 185 King Street, and we'll be doing that same band, only slightly better because we'll be a little more rehearsed this Sunday. And yeah, mostly drawing from like old soul repertoire and a little bit of old country. And I think it's going to be really, really great music, easy to listen, and I think the weather's going to be great. It should be really fun.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds really cool. I watch you play and I have no idea. I know you're a very bright person. I have no idea how you remember all that stuff. How do you do it?
It's really that part can be really challenging, remembering everything. Diligent rehearsal, preparation, and very simple and basic notes
Hmm.
that are very easy to read. I don't write like full charts. Like if you play like a jazz gig, you'll have like everything is written out. But I'll just make like a couple little notes about how certain things go, things that I'm likely to forget. And that'll give me enough of a cue because internalizing all of this music is a big challenge, especially like, playing different music every week. The band I play in when I tour, the String Dusters, we probably have 450 songs in our repertoire. So keeping on top of everything can be challenging, but just like little cues, little notes. But for these weekly shows, basically just a lot of preparation.
Cool. The breadth of your repertoire is so deep and so varied. What are the styles of music that have influenced you, and do you ever see at least the styles that really kind of perk your ears, and do you ever see any of that kind of subconsciously getting coming through your playing?
Yeah, definitely. I think it, everything I play is kind of the result of everything that I've ever heard, and that's most my biggest and strongest and main influences have been mostly in the bluegrass world. Um, Musicians like Tony Rice or Sam Bush, Leftover Salmon, Jamgrass, that sort of stuff. But inherent in that music, that music itself is sort of like a microcosm of Americana in general, which includes um, country influences, Irish influences, um, even like old time influences, blues and rock and jazz. All of that stuff gets kind of mixed into the sort of neo acoustic music that I play typically as part of like my main gig with the String Dusters. And so the I've sort of taken the opportunity with my weekly gigs to get a little more sort of specific and build ensembles that are attempting to sort of go in a musical direction instead of everything sounding just sort of like a mixing pot of everything all the time. I try really hard to find musicians who are steeped in styles that I'm not as familiar with. Specifically, like for example, this ensemble I'm playing with this week started as um, a desire to play some old blues music. So I asked Devin, who he recommended, And we first played with another guitar player who lives around here, Lee Griffin, who's kind of like a local blues legend. And that show was very much like what he calls like jump blues, sort of this specific style of blues that I have very little relationship with, but wanted to learn more about. And what better way to learn than sort of full immersion? And then coming out of that, I said, well, Devin, let's do the same ensemble, but let's change out the guitar player and have you sing more. And so then Devin took us in this distinctly more sort of soul direction, which again is music that I have very little experience with. Now, I've been on the fringes of that when I've played with like a funk ensemble, for example. Like, stop me if this is going on too long. Like,
No,
there's a really great guitar player locally, plays in a band called The Feels, and another band I can't remember. His name's Matt Gardner. Awesome, like funk style guitar player. So I'll play in an ensemble with him and Derek Gardner, who's the keyboard player in this band, and Jeff Sipe, and we'll play funk. And on one end of that is we'll get into we'll get into like some Al Green or one song in particular I'm trying to remember right now that actually like part of the funk repertoire, but it also shows up in the soul repertoire, right? So there's like this little bit of crossover where the two of those meet, and that's really interesting to me too. Is the sort of intersections of where these styles kind of bump up against each other and the lines really blur, you know.
And so, of all those different genres, a lot of them their popular music is based on the 12-bar blues, right? Whether it's bluegrass, country, whatever.
Yeah, that's so true. And actually, Derek Gardner was making. Derek is just such an amazing and brilliant musician. We're so lucky to have him here. We were learning the tunes right there on the spot before the show last night, and we were playing a Dolly Parton song. And he said, you know, they really should have a name for this progression because it's similar to 12-bar blues, but it's different enough that it's not the same. If you tell the band it's a 12-bar blues, they're going to start missing changes because it does change, but it's this other progression that is actually like very specific and that will pop up lots of different places. And he said, you know, they should have a name for it, like country blues or like Dolly Parton blues, you know, something like that. So you're totally right. So much of this stuff comes from this sort of fundamental, starting with like a 12-bar blues, but then it's the variations that make it so complex and complicated. And you know, like I looked at my note sheet last night when we were rehearsing, and I said, Devin, I always know I'm in for it when I look at when I have my note sheet and there's no notes on it, because I've listened to these songs and I think, well, this is intuitive enough, but there are enough little variations in the timing, the way that it'll go to the 4 chord or the 5 chord and back to the 1. They're all different enough that you know, we couldn't just get up there and play them. We really did have to rehearse them and go through the little variations of it. And that is what I find really interesting about, one of the things that's so interesting about folk and blues and all of these Americana styles is that there's so much commonality, but then there are these little specific differences that make them distinct.
What would some typical notes be in your in your prep?
Well, the notes are pretty simple actually, and I use instead of writing the actual chord value like A, B, whatever it may be, A flat. I use the number system, which was sort of developed as a way of writing charts in Nashville. Sometimes they call it the Nashville number system. And what that does is it assigns the scale degree number to the chord as opposed to the chord itself. And what that enables you to do is think of things more as a universal pattern, whereas the 1 is always the 1 is always the 1, whereas an A is not a G, is not a B. You know, and that also enables you to transpose the key. I may learn the song in D, but then I show up and the singer wants to sing it in A, and if my notes are in D, then I'm having to do this mental, I have to either rewrite the chart or transpose in real time. Whereas if I'm thinking in terms of 1, flat 3, 4, the key can change, but the pattern stays the same. And so my notes will just be like, if the intro is something interesting, it'll be like INT and then a couple of changes, and then I'll have maybe what the chord progression is for the verse, the bridge is really the most common and most important thing to remember, because the bridge is always different. And if you think you know the song, the second half of the bridge is the part that's going to really get you.
Oh, that's interesting. Thanks for sharing with that. Do you have any blues heroes? And if so, who would they be?
I don't really have any blues heroes because I haven't listened to that music a ton. But the closest thing would be, um, yeah, Led Zeppelin and that entire band. Every member of that band, I love that music so much, and that was Zeppelin was kind of the first band when I was young that really captured my imagination. And that music was so rich. There was obviously the sort of fundamental blues that they were building on, but it was this sort of modern rock sound at the time. There were also these, the first place I ever heard a mandolin. I'm a bluegrass musician now, and I make my living playing bluegrass. But the first mandolin I ever heard was John Paul Jones playing mandolin on the folksier tracks and on Led Zeppelin 3 and 4. So for me, like all lines sort of point back toward Led Zeppelin.
I can see that because they're also kind of like this mashup of blues. You've got Celtic influence. You've got all the things that they listen to that come out through their, as you said, your work is the culmination of all the things that you've listened to.
Yeah.
So, well, excellent. You gave us a lot in that interview. So thank you very much, and we're looking forward to Sunday. The Wash and Loop.
Yeah, Wash and Lube, raising money for Friends of Dupont and all the work that they do on the vast and magical trail network that we have in Dupont. We are so fortunate to have it, and the 60 miles of single track are all really well conceived and really well constructed, but they need to have the drains cleared. It's like the main thing that has to happen, and it has to be done by hand, and it takes time, and it takes a lot of effort, and Friends of Dupont do an amazing job of systematically keeping the drains open. And it's such a simple thing that keeps the sediment in place and keeps those legacy trails there and retains their character for so long, but it absolutely has to be done by hand, and it just takes sweat equity. And so grateful for all the work that they do. I can't imagine what it was like before we had the trails at DuPont and access to the waterfalls, and that recreational opportunity so close to us is just amazing. So yeah, bring your bike or bring your checkbook or whatever it is, donations accepted, get your bike washed, listen to a little bit of good music, have some good food and drink, and some fellowship up here at Cedar Mountain Outpost, like the crossroads. I'm coming in halfway through my ride, you're going out on your ride. It's so quintessential of what goes on up here, and I think Sunday's going to be a really great day.
Yeah, excellent. Me too. Thanks.
Thanks, John.